everybody. I'm Lisa. I'm back, and this time we're going to talk about the endocrine system. So let's go ahead and get started with an introduction. So in humans, we have two main ways that we're going to communicate throughout the body. Number one is the endocrine system, and the other way is the nervous system. So think of the endocrine system as the snail mail, and think of the nervous system as like the email. So they are going to both specialize in communication, but they're going to do it in different ways. So for the endocrine system, it's a little slower, and they use chemical messengers called hormones. And the nervous system is a little different. It uses electric-like signaling, ending up with the transmission being completed with a neurotransmitter at the end of a long and pretty swift transmission. So what we're going to talk about are some of the glands, the hormones, and what they do, what they regulate. We'll talk a little bit about the chemistry of these hormones and how they're made, how they get around the body, and what they do when they get to where they need to go, how they actually complete that communication. We're also going to talk about stress and the endocrine system and its role in kind of a fight or flight, but also its role in or what happens to the body when there's protracted stress on the body. Also, we'll look at two types of secretions. So we'll look at the paracrine secretions and, the endocrine system secretions, the paracrine secretions, and then we'll also take a brief look at some of the dysfunctional elements of the endocrine system. So the body has four main mechanisms of communications between cells specifically. So gap junctions, that means cells that are next door neighbors to each other share little pores, like little holes in between them, and they can kind of push things back and forth, things like food, things like electrolytes, and so that's what that does. They're tethered together, and so that's why it's a junction. The neurotransmitter, which we talked about. So what happens is during communication via the neurons, right? There will be the electric-like signaling, action potential through the course of the neural network. And every time we kind of jump from one neuron to the next neuron, that act of passing on or transmitting that signal is completed with a chemical messenger known as a neurotransmitter. And it kind of swims across like a tiny little channel from one cell to the next, the synaptic cleft. Okay, and paracrine is secreted into the tissue fluids, and they kind of affect like a general neighborhood of cells. Hormones are just kind of a discrete chemical messenger group. They can have multiple actions in the body, but they travel in the bloodstream typically, and so that kind of gives them that widespread, like all of that over the body impact, and they're going to go straight into tissues and organs from there. So the endocrine system is composed of things like glands, of course, there's tissues, and also the cells that are going to manufacture and then secrete or like push out, right, those hormones. Endocrinology is the study of the endocrine system and how it operates, and then it helps us determine what's going wrong when we need to diagnose some of the disorders and treat them. Endocrine glands are specific organs that are the canonical and traditional sources of these hormones. And then hormones again themselves are again the chemical messengers that are manufactured and transported through the bloodstream. They go through the entire body, right? So it's not always just one localized small region of cells. And they stimulate physiological responses in this tissue or the cells of their target organ. And they can travel pretty far away. So that's how the nervous system and the hormones are linked, is that they don't just act locally, they can go, throughout the entire body. Okay. Here's generally this is the last slide. So here's generally where we're going to be looking at when we talk about the organs to know. So up here in the brain, we have pineal gland and the pituitary gland primarily. They're also indicated as hypothalamus. Moving down, right under the larynx or the voice box itself is the thyroid gland. And then if you look at the inset, like the third picture, it has these little yellow dots that are actually posterior there on like the back side, right? And these are going to be the parathyroid glands. These are little specialist groups, and they can actually be all the way down, almost as far as just right above the heart. So they can kind of be in many places. The thymus gland typically sits like right right in the center part of the chest, like right under sternum proper. Here, let's pop down into some of the quick jumping ones. So adrenaline gland, I'm sorry, the adrenal gland, which produces adrenaline. So this sits on top of the kidney, like a little beanie or snow hat, and because of the ability of the kidneys to perfuse the body really rapidly with blood, this is a very good and specific location to be able to kind of dump into the bloodstream from there. Next, we have the pancreas, which is going to participate in glucose and sugar processing in the body. We'll talk about that a little bit. We also saw that bit in the digestive system recently. We will also finally end with the reproductive organs, which are part of the reproductive organs, actually, the gonads, the ovary, and the testes. So ovary is specific to female, testes is specific to male, and they're essentially very similar at one point during embryonic development, actually the same structure, and then they differentiate during maturation of that embryo into the final, and then eventually into the final individual. So, okay, I think that kind of covers us for now. And so let's go ahead and get to the nitty-gritty with the next video, and I hope that is helpful. All right, bye.